Welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Thursday, April 7th, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and we bring you the best of LGBTQ+ news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Glen Weinzimer. You don't need to adjust your TV monitors. I am not Al Ferguson or Al Roker or anyone else that might lead a show. But I do have orange on my glasses in tribute to Al. Tonight, let's welcome anchor Chef Josie. She's a Bravo TV top chef and the master of the popular champagne and oyster celebration restaurant Bubbles and Pearls on the heart of the famous Wilton Drive. She's also known by her alter ego, DJ Lady Snack Daddy. Welcome, Chef Josie.
All right, well, hey, thanks for having me. I know we had to stop it there because the list just keeps on going, but I'm super excited to welcome our next anchor, John Buckley, a sales supervisor at Rimowa. He is the vice president and program director of the Unity Coalition, as well as the director and creator of the initiative Caoba. You know, a free traveling social event that features inspiring speakers, topics, and a safe space for all same gender loving men of color. He is also known as Buck Lords from the famous House of Lords. Good evening, John.
Thank you, Josie. It's always a pleasure to be here. Let's welcome anchor Carvel Estraplet, founder of Carvel Bikes, the only LGBTQ+ bicycle business in Wilton Manors. She is located in the Wilton Collective building on the Drive. She is an unapologetic, proud Black trans woman and member of the Wilton Manors Community Affairs Advisory Board. She also serves as the deputy director for the Florida Democratic LGBTQ+ Caucus. Good evening, Carvel.
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here. Let's welcome anchor Jeff Olivero. He is a founding member and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ+ Council, a unique community civic organization designed to unite the LGBTQ+ community in the greater Hollywood area. The council recently hosted their inaugural My Hollywood Pride. He is also the chair for the 2022 National LGBT Task Force Gala, being held here in October 2022 in Miami Beach. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Super excited to be here tonight with this great cast of characters we have.
That's a good way to put it,
And
cast of characters.
And welcome. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight this evening, and we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Thursday, April 7th. Today is World Health Day.
Hope everyone's feeling worldly healthy. Let's queer up business. After 2 years of pandemic, what's next for the LGBTQ+ business? Tonight we present a very special takeover of Queer News Tonight. All of our anchors on this evening are either business owners, help run businesses or charity organizations, or both, like in my case. Our first story this evening isn't anything you've seen on CNN or Fox. Our first news story this evening is about the individuals around the table with us. This pandemic has devastated many businesses, and each of us here have had our own challenges due to COVID-19. For tonight's first segment, we're going to be discussing what challenges we faced and what we are doing next to help our businesses succeed. And I've been giving some thought to that. Like, I wanted to kind of ask, do you think that there's a difference of the way we're handling and managing or got through the pandemic compared to a non-LGBT? Do you think there's anything to that? And I ask you, Josie, because you have a business right on Wilson Drive, you have a restaurant like I do, and we had some unique, like everyone else in the industry, but we're both still standing.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for that, right? I know that you probably share that sentiment. I can't say that we're facing different challenges, although we are in a world that seems a little bit more discriminatory, and we seem to be taking a step backwards when it comes, to the conversation of who you're supporting and where you're spending your money. But I think that because we've always led what we do, not with our LGBTQ plus flag, on my chest.
But do you think that the LGBT community, because we're so close, especially in Wilton Manors, that we're more likely to support each other than, say, the general population for a given restaurant?
Oh, well, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very grateful for that. We're a part of this wonderful community, LGBTQ rich and predominantly, and I think that everyone stepped out and recognizes what we're all going through because they're going through it. And so it's been really, it's been a community affair for sure.
Carvel, I mean, you've got a small business, probably the smallest of all of us, and it's
kind
unique.
It's definitely unique in every aspect, even as far as you guys were talking about. And initially, my business actually materialized because of COVID. And I always tell people, it's like, I use that quote, my business flourish came out of chaos, basically.
Right.
But as far as going back to your first question about facing discriminatory, initially we were trying to get PP loans, because I actually started my business prior, 6 months before COVID, actually on paper. So I was actually fortunate to get qualified to get loans. But the thing is, there were discriminatory stuff as far as getting PP loans. And I always tell people, when the COVID started, everybody started wanting to go be outside and get bikes. And then I was actually working at the Trek store at the time before I was still working to get my business started, but everyone wanted bikes. And I think my last month working at Trek recorded their best quarter ever at the end of 2021 and things like that, or actually 2020. And that's why I left. And so it was kind of my experience for the last 2 years has been the opposite.
Right.
So my business has been growing.
And I think we found that with all bike stores in town.
Yeah.
There was a shortage of bikes.
Yeah.
It was Christmas every day once the pandemic started.
Pretty
Because it
much,
was a safe place to be able to go out and be in public and socialize. And for the Smart Ride, we did a virtual that first year. And shockingly, without having an organized ride, we still raised a ton of money because people wanted to get out. And this was a way to socialize.
Yes.
And still be outdoors. I'm just curious when it comes to the nonprofit side. You were launching my Hollywood Pride, and the organization was just getting off the ground because I remember being at those early meetings and stuff. And how did COVID affect you guys?
Well, we obviously had the challenge of having a Pride event early in this year when we were still facing Omicron, and the downtown businesses in Hollywood were really eager to support an event and to have people come out, and especially the LGBTQ community that has never really organized an event in the city of Hollywood. So we had the support of local businesses, and we were also a new venue for their businesses to get exposure to our community. So I think we had overwhelming support from the local businesses, and also bringing people together who may have not been able to congregate. Obviously, living in Wilton Manors, we have a community here. In Hollywood, we don't have a connected community, which was why we founded the council in the first place, was to find members of our community and give them a safe space, events, social programming, so that we can bring people together.
So let me ask you this as a business, because your other world is more banking.
Yes.
And did you see, how did that change for you?
Well,
you got two different things going on. One is basically the general population, and the other is more LGBT.
Yeah, I mean, as a certified financial planner during a pandemic, and providing financial advice, it was well, there wasn't a roadmap to tell clients, well, listen, either the world will come to an end and you won't need any money, or we'll solve the pandemic. And that's the way we had to approach a situation where we really didn't know in the early days. And then obviously with the stock market having such volatility, and then having this huge comeback in the stock market and the economy, and now clients and business owners, as you included, are facing issues around inflation, food prices going up, prices of everything going up, cost of housing is really impacting the LGBTQ community probably more than the general population. So there's a lot of financial advice, and we've gone through like this back and forth that's been really difficult for anyone to navigate, including the LGBTQ community.
Buck, just from your perspective, just because I want to get everyone's feeling on this, like, how was this experience for you this last 2 years?
So within the last 2 years, with Unity, we did our Celebrate Orgullo during the pandemic. For the most part, we switched our platform to do virtual events like much of the other nonprofits. But then we did a drive-in that was actually a go-to event where we had a freestyle concert with Lisa, and it actually turned out really great. We were able to still, get donations, and we were able to still apply for grants and funding. But it was nice to actually have an event with people and have some sort of normalcy. As far as the other side, with me working day in and day out, our job closed for 10 weeks. But throughout that time, luckily, being that I do work in one of the largest global luxury conglomerates.
Aren't you fancy?
We were supported, luckily, with resources that, secured my job, and I never really had to worry about money during that time. So I was very fortunate and grateful that, I'm employed by LVMH. But for the most part, ever since we opened back up, business has flourished, and we're doing really, really well.
Any other thoughts on it before we move on? This was a pretty big deal for our community as well as the world, and just from a health standpoint, how did that affect everybody?
Well, I think it's interesting as your businesses, and you both own restaurants, and obviously you're seeing differences in your businesses, is that the pandemic has changed the way we do business. Even and on the nonprofit side, I attended the drive-in event, and I hope that event happens all the time. Yeah. I think that was a great idea, and it made us do things differently that we didn't do in the past. So I think there's a lot of great changes. Like, I'm sure your takeout business has gone off the charts, where you didn't focus on it as much maybe in the past, and doing different types of ways to run your business. I think we've all learned something new.
It made us all
right. Menus and those things. It saves us money.
But it's interesting in the business, like right now, our biggest problem is still finding, we lost our driver. So 20% of our business is delivery, and we have no delivery driver this week. So the whole week we've had to say, well, come in, we'll give you free dessert if you pick up your own food, because we can't do deliveries, because we're facing the same problems everyone else is from the labor standpoint in different areas.
Yeah,
right.
There's no mechanics, and I always tell people, I'm like, I live my shop because I'm doing the repairs. I don't have any other mechanics or anything like that. So yeah, it's definitely a storage from even the small mom and pop shops, even to the big box truck stores, where they have record profits, where they got no staff. So it's across the board. But the other thing I want to point out, you mentioned what the pandemic has teach everybody is to pivot. Literally, you gotta think this way because we don't know about tomorrow. So I think that's the ultimate lesson, not only through business but life too. Everyone just had to adapt. It's still adapting.
I think another a really big blessing that came out of it was, especially in our industry, it may seem like something that hit us a little harder and took our labor costs through the roof, but it was a conversation that obviously you're seeing the result of that conversation fully laid out. And it was, people weren't being taken care of in the service industry. Yes. And as a career service industry person, you know, I know there was no insurance plans in place. People were underpaid.
Same in retail. Retail, yeah.
And now we're understanding it created value and even equity for all of the employees, which is also concerning because, you know, people now during the pandemic, they realized that they could like do the same thing for the same money sitting at home in their pajamas, you know? So it's like, where are my people out who need that, like, you know, that physical labor? I need you guys.
Need working hands, It's definitely true about that. But.
Let's move on to, because we've got a few more topics to hit tonight, and we spent a lot of time on this, which was worthy.
Next, we're going to queer up courts. Even after attacks on LGBTQ plus record, Judge Jackson makes history at Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed for the Supreme Court today with the bipartisan support, making history as the first black woman to be confirmed to the country's highest court. While she did get the support of moderate Republican Senators Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, and Lisa Murkowski, she received plenty of attacks from other members of the GOP. One standout was Senator John Cornyn of Texas. He attacked Jackson for her support of the Obergefell versus Hodges, calling it a case of policy making from the bench, saying people should be able to discriminate against gay people if it is part of their, in quote, sincerely held religious beliefs. Jackson replied saying, quote, that is the nature of a right. When there is a right, it means that there are limitations on regulation, even if people are regulating pursuant to their sincerely held religious beliefs.
This was a huge story, and it's groundbreaking, and it actually was just announced probably just before we came on the air that she was officially won. But would you look at Lindsey Graham and some of the others who have said if they were in charge, they wouldn't have even let it get to a conversation. They were going to block it like they did, you know, in the last two administrations back during Obama, that it wouldn't even get a chance. So,
I mean, they're just, I mean, I'm not really surprised at the Senator Graham being a hypocrite of his own words, because he was like, did he endorse her to be on?
Yes.
Yeah. So of course, going back on his word.
I mean, the attacks that she faced being so overly qualified for the position, being a woman of color, and the way she handled herself was amazing. It was a fantastic day for our country, and I don't think we shouldn't even talk about Republicans or Lindsey Graham. We should talk about Ketanji Brown and being our newest Supreme Court justice.
She's from down
celebrating
here.
her, celebrating something good coming from Florida.
A rare moment.
And you know, and I think that's something that's really important is to echo some of the words that one of our other senators, not a Republican, mentioned about what this day and what this appointment really means for all the young women and little girls watching this woman represent herself. The journey she took to get there, the road she took, she did not take the shortcut. She did not use her the people she knew, her resources. She worked hard and she made the steps and took the long road. And now it pays off because she has a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court. I'm so excited about that.
Absolutely. And I think that the hope that it brings to all minorities, whether you're black or whether you're Indian or whether you're Chinese, that you can be and you can get to this court. I just think that is groundbreaking and gives so much hope for the future.
Snaps.
All right, so next, let's queer up the USA view. Repeal of same-sex marriage as Tennessee GOP undermines right and backed by major corporations. A story of 24 Tennessee Republican lawmakers recently introduced a bill that would offer a legal alternative to a marriage called Record of Marital Contract at Common Law.
Woof.
Just follow along. The change is intended to block same-sex marriages in the state by redefining legal unions. This change has some surprising corporate financial backers, including Amazon, Comcast, and Cigna. The bill is meant to block court decisions that have defined marriage and requires Congress to define it. And several opponents have pointed out that this counters a 2018 law that restricts marriage in the state to adults of 17 years of age or older, causing the bill's sponsors to propose an amendment that includes age restrictions.
Well, this is again Republicans searching for a problem that doesn't exist, and this is obviously a push to try to overturn the marriage equality ruling by bringing this to the Supreme Court if this gets fought in the courts. And they know that the courts, even with the appointment of Ketanji Brown, is still weighted in favor of conservatives. So again, warning to all of our people out there, go out and vote so these people don't get elected and they can't pass these bills.
Yeah, right. Midterm elections are coming, right?
Midterms, yeah. I think we talked before about what this law would actually do is it would basically minimize the current law for marriage commitments and create a new supersize that only a man and a woman can be legally recognized as marriage, and it's no longer a religious ceremony, but it takes its place. And how's that going to travel on to the rest of Republican states like ours led here in Florida or in Texas as this takes any traction, and then what does it do when it gets to the Supreme Court? Yeah,
so Republicans are spending their time creating distinctions just to create, again, discrimination. And, because I'm in food and I've been in food for a long time, 1 in 6 children go to bed hungry every single night in this country. Yeah. So when we're talking about ending, legally, marriage equality, I talk about let's end hunger.
And I think that's important. We have refocused. These stories come up and they distract us from things that we could be doing, like solving hunger, like solving homelessness, mental disease, and things like that.
I mean, it's a race to the bottom with GOP across the country. I mean, creating manufacturer outrage for non-issues. And like I said, it's just, they have no platform. So it's just, like it's what you mentioned, Jeff, like they're trying to create a court case precedent for it, but it's a race to the bottom, depraved, disgusting.
I think what will be interesting to see is that they named 3 companies that are major corporations that they say support. What will their stance be, like we just saw with the Disney and Don't Say Gay bill? These organizations have been these organizations have been giving money to these lawmakers so they can get what they want out of the state. Will they back down now? Not want to be associated? How will they react, and what will we see as a result?
Absolutely. I mean, we know Tennessee's represented by the wonderful Marsha Blackburn, who made a fool of herself during the Ketanji Brown hearings. Oh my God. And so again, these are people that are, they're playing to their audience with these bills. And yes, I do hope corporations see what's happening and pull funding from these lawmakers.
All right, queering up gay culture. New study reveals nearly half of LGBTQ plus teens considered suicide in 2021. Coming out as LGBTQ plus can be tough, especially in the world of restricted access to resource, thanks to laws like Florida Don't Say Gay bill. The new CDC data shows that 2021 had 46% of American teenagers who identify as homosexual or bisexual teenagers said they have seriously considered suicide in the first 6 months of the year. And 26% of all teenagers who identify as homosexual or bisexual said they have attempted suicide in that same time period. Teenagers who identify as heterosexual were in much better headspace, with 13% saying that they have considered suicide and 5% said they have attempted suicide. If you know someone or you have contemplated suicide, please call the Trevor Project at 1-866-488-7386.
These numbers are astounding. When you look at the LGBT community and the high risk in 2021, 48% of people wanting to consider, or 46% considering suicide as their only way out. And we've got these new bills out, like the new Don't Say Gay bill, what we're talking about just now about the marriage, and try to redefine it. These kids are trying to figure out who they are, and then they're being pounded from all sides.
And now it's like I think it's even worse now for the kids. Now it's coming from adults. When I was in high school, I mean, it's not even. Yeah, I mean, it's still bullying in school, but it's not as nearly as when I was in high school, like in the '90s or stuff like that. Because I personally have like one of my workers is a high school kid who goes to Fort Lauderdale High School, and they don't face that. Like, it's the actions of adults, and we're talking about GOP across the nation trying to pass. So it's scary that they're trying to pass on, and this has always been a problem. And it's just
because the adults should be the people that are their mentors, the people that they
exactly.
look up to for guidance, the ones that show them the way, and they're the ones that are now trying to block. And it's not necessarily their peers, because we've seen as the younger generation comes, they're much more accepting of the LGBTQ community, where our earlier generations, especially mine, because I'm the oldest one at the table, it was about being bullied more than anything else. You didn't really worry about the school because they didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
So
mental health is also something that is often not talked about, and it's very important because, coming up in my day and age, we never had like these groups that they have in schools now, such as SAFE and outlets where you can actually, talk to someone and get some sort of support when you felt like you had no support from anybody. Yeah. And now they're trying to impose all of these things to take that away from these kids who are now gonna be subject to bullying. And mentally that destroys you.
Self-esteem is everything, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
And if you can't build on it.
When I was part of PFLAG for many years, we had parents that would come in, and we would regularly ask during the meetings, even there, you have parents that were there because they were obviously trying to be supportive or were supportive, and we would, ask the question, have you ever, sometimes they would even come to PFLAG with their kids, and we'd also observe the youth group here at SunServe, which is another great organization that helps LGBTQ youth, and ask how many people in the room have considered suicide, and parents' mouths would drop when they would see all of the hands that would go up, and they would say, "Oh, not my child. They didn't think about suicide because I create a loving environment." It has nothing to even do with your parents. It has to do with the rest of the world, and that's why these attacks are so harmful to our community.
I spend a lot of time working with young people. I work with young adults and kids aging out of foster care, and I work with teenagers. And what I do is I coach them into mindfulness and meditation. And we have to really, when we talk about mental health, we have to really start talking about coping mechanisms and skill sets. And I wish somebody would have given me these tools when I was 10 years old so that I could understand how to process my emotions, right? Or understand what was real and what I'm just making up at the moment. And just these really, and just ways to connect and ground myself in this world where there is so much chaos. And, I'm an optimist, so chaos coming out of my mouth is wow, but even I see the chaos, right?
Just curiosity, we've got 5 of us on this panel, all LGBT. At any point in your life, were you in that state of depression?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll admit to it. I know I was as a young kid.
Definitely.
So, and we didn't have those resources.
No.
And now you take in all the social media that's coming at you 24/7. And if it's good, that's great. And if it's supportive, but if it's negative and that's covering the news, that depression can be much more aggravated.
Yeah, you remember that campaign, It Gets Better. And so, we're all here standing saying it gets better.
And to the youth that might be watching, it gets better. So don't give up, because the 5 of us here, we're in your shoes and we understand what that's like. And we found our way out of it and found our path. Yeah. And there's a path for everyone to feel included and part of this world and make a difference. Go ahead.
And if I can add, support the Trevor Project, because they're a wonderful, wonderful organization, and look them up, check them out, and support them.
All right.
Josie, let's move on.
Well, next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ+ religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
Hi, I'm Evan Almanzar, and I'm with Sunsurf Youth Leadership Council, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Welcome back. We finished tonight's queer news headlines with what we call LGBTQ plus flash news.
LGBTQ plus flash news. Lauren Boebert wants age restriction of 21 before LGBTQ plus comes out. U.S. Representative, Lauren Boebert of Colorado is at it again. The sadly Florida-born, bar-owning, pro-gun, high school dropout recently tweeted her opinions on being LGBTQ plus, writing, quote, "We require people to be 21 to purchase alcoholic beverages and 21 to purchase tobacco products. Why is it so unreasonable to require people to reach a certain level of maturity before making life-altering decisions about their sexuality and identity?" End quote. She did later clarify that owning firearms should not have age restrictions, because she's gun-toting. Queer News Tonight would like to point out that Representative Boebert dropped out of high school to have her oldest son, meaning she had chosen her sexuality well before she turned 21. One thing I have to say is, did she have her son in the back of a truck or have sex in the back of the truck? I don't remember.
I think it's both.
Front seat.
Front seat,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
to clarify that.
Thanks, Lauren.
She's ridiculous. I don't know this to describe her. Every word.
No words.
Yeah.
And I mean, seriously, this is suggesting that we all decide we're LGBT. Like we all decide.
It's a decision, yeah.
And then we don't realize it till we're 21.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, this is all going to catch up with her, so she should probably start looking in that rear view mirror. I know she already has a good relationship with it.
Yeah.
Shocking. Next, we're going to queer up LGBTQ plus flash news. New report on muscle building supplements' effect on LGBTQ plus health. People familiar with the transgender community will know the term body dysmorphia. New studies have found that also rampant in the cisgender LGB community. One study shows that 44% of gay men, 42% of bisexual men, 29% of lesbian women, and 30% of bisexual women report that they use creatine, steroids, or protein supplements. And for many, it's a lifetime use. This can be very bad news for health. Prolonged steroid use can lead to heart disease, kidney problems, and liver failure. Supplements like proteins and creatine are also not generally regulated or studied for medical safety and can cause health issues as well. I mean, overall, I think you have to be very careful when you use those sort of supplements to work out. I do use creatine because it gives me that little bit of boost in the gym, but at the same time I'm very cautious as to which creatine I use because you do read the ingredients and everything before you purchase these things, so it's always good to make sure you know what you're drinking.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember tons of supplements that have been around before that they're now outlawed, like fen-phen, all kinds of things. And so, it's good to remember that if it's not FDA approved, there can be varying degrees of the efficacy or safety of it.
Which is why I worry about my Revlon product, because they're also not FDA tested. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to piggyback on what John and Jeff said, with any supplements, I take supplements too for me, I'm a cyclist. But the other thing, they didn't point out in the article about, they mentioned trans having body issues. As a trans woman, I still have issues. For me, comparing to other women, I don't have enough curves. There's a lot of trans women I know, I'm using myself, I'm just saying that issue is prevalent. That's why you see girls do black market surgery, the pop, all the stuff. So I'm surprised they didn't put that. It's actually really high, that number in the trans community as far as that. And so just want to share that sense.
Cool. Well, this is how I got the
creatine.
Everyone thinks it's spinach and Popeye.
I thought it was garlic. It's not garlic nuts?
No, it's not
Could
garlic.
Be,
we like the
that's the belly
we like those.
Well, listen, guys, I'm the chef here at the table, and let food be your pharmacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Okay. LGBTQ plus flash news, a sexy look back of 1970s and 80s queer America with photography of Christopher Makos. Christopher Makos is an icon of queer photography, having snapped images of some of the biggest names in LGBT plus pop culture of the 60s and 70s, and beyond. From Andy Warhol and Liza Minnelli kissing, oh my God, to artist Keith Harington and his ex-lover, Juan Dubois, and plenty of pictures of his friends Debbie Harry, who also was known for his pictures of the male body in general. Woof. His works have been exhibited at the Tate Modern in London, the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York as well, the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and the Guggenheim Museum in Balboa. I think it's great.
Yeah, what this is right here, this is a piece of our history, our modern history, and I'm fortunate to have been able to experience some of that while living in New York for a decade.
Did you get photographed by him?
I didn't, but you know, Debbie and I go way back.
Okay.
So.
Cool.
Definitely loving the imagery and the history behind that all.
Yeah, I could look at images of 70s and 80s, especially celebrities who are not photoshopped and edited and are living their real life on camera. Is way different than looking at, you know, an Us Weekly or Instagram of a celebrity today. So I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this article too. I just recently was watching on Netflix the 4-part series Andy Warhol. That too. So the timing that and so seeing these photos is pretty cool. So good history, good queer history.
Yeah. It's funny, after Bridgerton last night, I watched the final of the second season, and right following it, it automatically went into the Andy Warhol thing. So seeing this today was sort of ironic that it was so timely.
Oh, well, you know, big, what do they call it? The big boy, or what do they call it? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, anyways, that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, and share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in many of the groups that you're a member of. Tonight's stories are about our community and deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of the Happening Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Glen Weinzimer, and on behalf of these wonderful LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Chef Josie, John Buckley, Carvel Estrup, and Jeff Oliverio, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ